The Retro Spider-Man inspired wave reviews keep coming today. Ben Reilly. Well, Spider-Man. Well, the Ben Reilly Spider-Man. Well, the Scarlet Spider. Well, not the Scarlet Spider. Basically, in the 90s Clone Saga, it's a thing. Look it up. It was awful. But some fun things about the Clone Saga include Ben Reilly's costume when he takes on the mantle of Spider-Man. It's a pretty fun design. A lot of fun to draw when I was a kid as well. This is a, essentially, alternate version of, if I can dismount my camera, the Peter Parker Spider-Man, who's up there punching through the Sandman's head, that came in the first wave of these figures. This is essentially a repaint, as is at least one other figure in this wave, the symbiote Spider-Man, who you can see down here, depicted on the back of the packaging. These two are just repaints of a pre-existing figure with a couple of new accessories. In the symbiote Spider's case, it's a different head sculpt because he doesn't have the eye lenses. And in the case of Ben Reilly, it is obviously the repaint, but the external web shooters on his wrists. Everything else is just repainted. He does not come with a spare head, which I think is a shame because Peter came with two. He came with this head, which the other one I currently have is wearing, and he came with one with slightly more narrow eye lenses. It'd be cool if Ben had come with maybe an alternative with bigger eye lenses, more akin to the Spider-Man in the logo. So then Peter and Ben would have a couple of optional heads to share between them. Sort of sucks that he's got the exact same head, is what I'm saying. On the back, Ben Reilly's bio, because if I remember correctly, Ben Reilly only appears toward the end of the animated series as like an alternate Spider-Man from another dimension. The bio here alludes more to the comics of the 90s. After years of self-imposed exile, Spider-Man is back, now calling himself Ben Reilly, because it's Ben Reilly, and sporting a brand new costume and web shooters, the wall crawler returns to fight crime. So that's a little confusing without context, isn't it? The Kung Fu grip display on the back shows that you can switch out his hands. Well done. Other figures in the wave include Hobgoblin, who we've reviewed, still to come, Shocker, Symbiote Spider-Man, Hammerhead, and the Spider-Armor Mark 1. But as for now, let's get our clone on. That sounds wrong, but feels so right. Ben Reilly. Let's take a look at articulation before we do anything else. Ben Reilly has ankle pivot and back and forth with a blue joint into it. He has rotation in the calf, which I'll be honest, because of the design of his costume, is a massive shame and makes me think they should have found an alternate way to have it so that his foot swivels side to side and round instead of the calf. He has a double knee joint because the red peg used to blend in with the web on the outside of his leg. It means on the inside of the leg he has one red peg and one blue peg. He has a calf swivel. He's got the big beefy thighs of the Spider-Man from this wave. The crotch articulation is fairly open, so you can get a nice range of movement for Spider-Man, which is good for swinging, kicking, things like that. Like the previous Spider-Man, because it's the same body mold, he does not have a waist swivel, but he does have a really solid crunch at the waist for bending and flexing. He also has a sort of ball joint mounted rib crunch, so you can have him properly bent over or have him flexing outwards a bit more for swings, and it means that this is what you can turn if you want to turn his torso, but be gentle with it. Obviously it breaks up the costume slightly with Ben Reilly because you have the giant spider on the front and the back, which if you rotate his body too much is out of positions. It's all up to you. His arms! He has the patented Spidey extra flex in the shoulder and chest. His arm goes in and out, up and down. He has rotation at the top of his upper arm. He has a double elbow joint, which is, not too flexy, actually. It's a little restrictive. He has bends on the wrists, of course, on the individual wrist pieces. This is a web, so chances are you're going to have it like that if you're using this hand. And he also has built on, it doesn't seem to be a loose piece, his external web shooters. Like the other Spidey, he has the very, very unusual neck situation, which as you can see is a gap at the back to allow a little more movement for the double ball ended peg so that his head can be up here. And has a decent range of movement. The downside to that, of course, being that he's got a bloody big hole in the back of his neck, and it's something that could have probably been achieved by him just, having a normal, peg with a hinge that they used to do, but seem to be slowly segueing out of having for these figures, which I find very strange. Like, they're finding alternatives, but the alternatives never quite work. What does work is his accessories. He should really have a second head to give us an alternative for Peter and Ben, a mix and match, considering they have the same neck joint, so clearly can swap heads. But he has 2 fisticuffs. There we go. The paint's not too bad on those, because obviously it's a little scrappy, what with the webs being on 2 fingers and a thumb per hand. He also has crawling hands / sort of combat, holding out hands. Ben Reilly's costume has, like I just said, webs on only 3 of the digits. And the paint is fairly consistent on these, for the most part. Not so much on the fists. Seems to have struggled a little bit on the fists. Only slightly, though. That's fine. A little bleed onto one of the fingers. One of the blue fingers. That's alright. As for the paint, it's nice. It's just bold colours like the Peter Parker release from the first wave. And it's just all round. It's a very standard, and I don't mean that in a bad way, a very standard kind of Spider-Man figure. Let's see how he looks in action, shall we? You know what? Pretty decent. Honestly, it's just a nice looking figure. I think that's the best thing I can say about these. Do I think they're definitive Spidey figures? I don't know. I think there's a happy medium with some more articulation, possibly, but it's really dynamic looking. The bold colours of this retro wave work in Ben Reilly's favour, because you get a really shocking red and blue. Which is sort of what you want for Ben Reilly. You want his costume to pop. Maybe a slightly darker blue for Ben, but I honestly don't mind. I think he looks good. The wrist mounted web shooters look nice. The spider design looks nice. The fact that they've nailed this suggests they're probably going to attempt Spider Carnage at some point in this wave, because why not? You just have to change the head and the hands. But, I mean, they could have done that with this. I think my only gripe with this is more accessories. Like, he's only 1 accessory shorter than the initial Spider-Man release, and that's an alternate head. If you didn't want to give us an alternate mask portrait, you could have given us maybe a Ben Reilly head, so a blonde Peter Parker head. Heck, this could have been the excuse to give us like 2 non-glasses Peter Parker heads, a blonde one and a brunette one. Do I think this is a must-have? No. Do I think if you're a fan of Ben Reilly and you've never had a Ben Reilly figure before, is this worth picking up? Absolutely. I like Ben Reilly. I'm not a huge fan of the Clone Saga, and I always have found more entertainment in the character in his more recent weird-ass incarnations. I've not got up to Beyond yet, but I've been catching up on Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider from 2018. I've loved like the whole thing of him, the clone of 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 him, basically going through a villain arc and starting to redeem himself. It's been fun. But as far as like a classic 90s Ben Reilly kind of thing, especially if you want to bulk up a Spider-Verse-esque display of alternative Spider-Men, Spider-Women, Spider-People, Spider costumes, wouldn't hurt to pick this guy up. And if you missed out on the original Retro Spidey, this is not a bad alternative. What do you think of the Ben Reilly Spider-Man figure? Let me know down in the comments below. Do you think it's worth picking up? Do you want to help me pick up more toys? You can go to my PayPal link or my Amazon wishlist down in the description, and you'll always get a shout out for any contribution you make toward the toy reviews. No obligation to do that, obviously. I'll just review toys as and when I get them. You can help me out in other ways by commenting down below, liking the video, subscribing if you haven't already, and making sure to ring that bell in case you want to catch more toy reviews in the near future. Moving on to another member of the Retro Wave very soon. See you next time.